Anger is a tricky emotion. Anger can be a really tricky emotion, and I call it tricky because sometimes it can confuse us. The intensity of the emotions when we feel angry sometimes can make us think and feel things where we can't actually understand exactly what is going on. Sometimes it's that we feel emotionally flooded, and it can actually cloud our judgment. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit today about some questions to ask yourself the next time you feel angry so that you can identify what the heck is going on and then make good decisions as a result. So, I'm Dr. Seth Meyers, psychologist, and sometimes when you feel angry, it can be a sign of this that you need more information about something. Sometimes what's making you really angry, you may get focused on some details, but actually, if you can take a step back, look at the situation, and ask yourself, wait a minute, do I actually need more information here? Is it possible that my emotional reaction of anger is showing me that I actually need some more information on this issue to better figure out what's going on and how I should feel? Do I need more information? That is a really helpful question that you can ask yourself. A lot of times we go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5 seconds in our brains, when actually what we need sometimes in that situation is to get a little bit more information, to pause and ask for a little more information before we solidify our feeling and our thoughts. All right. That's number one. Number two, did a boundary that I have get crossed? Did somebody violate a boundary that I had set? Did I have a fair rule, so to speak, or a boundary or a clear expectation, and somebody crossed it and violated it and broke that boundary? Was a boundary broken or violated in this situation? That is a really simple but important question. That's question number two. Number three, have I made a false assumption? Have I made a false assumption on this issue? Am I assuming something as a fact when it might actually not be true? There is a really important concept in therapy that I like a lot that's called real but not true. So sometimes something can feel real to us, but it doesn't mean that it's true. This is a concept that's sometimes talked about in dialectical and behavior therapy, or DBT for short. It's also used in other modalities. But this idea of real but not true is exactly what happens sometimes when people get overwhelmed and make an assumption too quickly. Because this feels so real, they make the assumption, but they don't realize that they are calling it a fact before they are certain that it is 100% true. Okay? So that is really important. Did I make a false assumption, possibly? And lastly, number four that I want to talk about is one that is probably the most important. And so often I have seen in my work as a clinical psychologist for over 20 years is people telling themselves that when they're angry, they are right and they are actually loving the feeling, the intensity, the adrenaline rush of feeling right and empowered and strong when they're angry. Okay. So this is the question. Am I liking too much how angry I feel in this moment? Am I liking too much how angry I feel in this moment? Am I liking it too much? Am I feeling really strong in my anger in this moment? Now, a lot of times people actually prefer to feel angry as opposed to sad or depressed. And this might not surprise you. Perhaps you can even relate yourself. But when we feel sad or depressed, sometimes we feel kind of withdrawn and sometimes we feel defeated. We don't necessarily feel strong. In fact, maybe we're having a moment where we feel weak. It doesn't mean we're weak, but these are feelings, right? Well, a lot of times people much prefer feeling angry because anger can feel like a very empowering emotion. You really own your space. You feel sure and certain about your feelings. It is an empowering emotion. But do not let anger be an opiate for you. Anger can almost function like a drug in that it can hit you so strong, and people can feel in that moment so sure, so certain, so strong, and they like that feeling, but they get stuck in the anger too much. They get so stuck that they don't listen to the other person or other people. They don't think about other possible alternatives. They get stuck in that moment of strength and power and feeling right. The question is, do we want to be right, or do we want to feel balanced? Do we want to be right, or do we want to be happier? Do we want to be right, or do we want to find a way to have some peace in this relationship that has upset us? Okay. So these questions, I hope, have really gotten you thinking about ways to clock your own anger. Do a little simple self inventory when you feel really angry, so that you don't overdo your anger, so that you don't get locked into a thought or a belief that is too rigid about your rightness. And so that you can make sure, if you're going to be making any decisions, that you make good ones, balanced ones. And so often, so often in life, the decisions that we make are better ones if we make them after a pause, and especially after a good night's sleep. All right. I know that anger is something that a lot of people deal with. I think it's probably our least understood emotion. I think it's the emotion that probably is one of the ones that people are most uncomfortable with. Sometimes people can even be afraid of their anger. But anger can be perfectly fine as long as we learn how to manage it well. All right. So I hope it's been helpful, this video. And you can also check out my whole library of videos here on my channel at YouTube, Dr. Seth, Psychologist. You may also like my podcast, Insight with Dr. Seth, where I do full interviews and full episodes on some of these topics that are self-improvement and human behavior topics, so we can understand each other better. I'll see you next time, everybody.